Finally, the time has come. If you asked me a year ago, I wouldn't have thought I would ever see a book solely for the Salamanders. And with its release, a new hero joins the ranks of my army, to lead them into the fires of battle. Let's paint Adrax Agatone. Firstly, what a model. It's a massive treat as a Salamanders player to get a kit for the faction. And Adrax has all the marks of a son of Vulcan, complete with a flamer, hammer, and scale cloak. It's a fantastic kit that is a breeze to assemble. And here he is, ready for the painting to begin. I've broken the model into 5 sub-assemblies: the base, body, head, cloak, and backpack. The first step is fairly straightforward. I'm going to prime him black using Vallejo's Surface Primer Black. For the first 2 steps of this project, I'm going to use an airbrush. If you don't have an airbrush, the traditional method works fine. Just make sure to apply the primer or paint in a thin application over multiple coats to achieve a result with good coverage but doesn't clog up any details. With the priming now done, the first step of painting will be to apply the base to the armor sections, and no color would be more suitable than Nocturne Green. This color will serve as the darkest tones of our Salamander battle plate. Here's a quick comparison. This intercessor has been primed and based with the same products as Adrax, but using a standard brush instead of the airbrush. Before continuing with the green components, I will fill in the black areas of the model with Abaddon Black. This will include the weapon casings, drapery elements, accessories, Adrax's skin, and the armor joints. As a miniature painter, there's nothing worse than ruining your own work, and the dishonor it brings. When you're not sure which areas to tackle on a model first, always remember, when in doubt, work from inside to out. Back onto the battle plate. I'll be painting the 3rd Company Captain using my panel shading technique, because I'm striving to give Adrax a dynamic presence on the tabletop compared to the standard battle line troops. I will be blending using an array of 3 colors: Nocturne Green, Instar's Grass Green Matte, and Citadel's Moot Green. If you want to see a more detailed breakdown of my panel shading technique, you can check out this video here. Since the armor covers the majority of Adrax, and the technique itself is rather intermediate, it'll take some time as I work the blends to a satisfactory level. I find having a wet palette really helps for this kind of work, allowing me to grab colors as needed to keep those gradients consistent. And after a character's worth of blending, the armor panels have been worked out to a standard worthy of the 3rd Company Captain. The next step will be to panel shade the weapon casings and black armor components in a similar fashion. For this, I will use Eshin Gray. It's at this stage I will begin layering Adrax's face with Eshin Gray. The obsidian skin is challenging, as you don't have the luxury of using a variety of hues to define the details as compared with standard human skin. It's for this reason we'll be coming back to his face at a layer stage to increase the contrast in the values used. Next, we base the metal areas. I will use Iron Warriors for the steel parts, Balthazar Gold for the bronze weapon details and gold trim. And for the gold areas, I will layer up with Citadel's Gehenna's Gold. When doing the flamer, I recommend to take care to keep the circular vents black, ensuring we keep that contrast to make the feature stand out. For the cloak scales and hammer handle, I will be using Mephiston Red plus Rhinox Hide for the base color, and adding Steel Legion Drab and Kislev Flesh to layer up the tones and create those bright edges. This may seem sort of out of sequence, but for a detail like this cape, which is an organic hide from a Beast of Nocturne, I want to apply these tones now and have our wash mute them relative to Adrax's armor. I will leave the buildup of the hammer handle's tones for after the washing stage. The inside of the cloak will be done using Instar's Cool Grey Matte, mixed with Steel Legion Drab and Stegadon Scale Green, in a 3:1:1 ratio. For the highlights, I'll be adding Administratum Grey to the mixture. These colors will also be used on the Purity Seals paper as well. An organic detail like this can be handled in a messier fashion, and will actually provide some nice visual contrast between how the organic versus inorganic materials are handled. Finally, we're on to our washes. The first wash will be in Cassandora Yellow on the gold armor details. Rather than using Reichland Flesh, which warms the gold, I find Cassandora makes it far more vibrant, which is an aesthetic I prefer. Here I'm using a generous amount of the shade, but I'm trying to manage it into specific areas, sort of nudging it where I want it to build up heavier and add more range to the armor trims. The iron, bronze, black armor components and the skin will be washed with Nuln Oil mixed with Lamian Medium. The armor will be handled very specifically. Mixing Beeltan Green shade with a small amount of Nocturne Green will darken the wash and change its consistency closer to that of an ink, which I will use to pin wash the recesses of the armor, adding more dimension to our panel shading. For this kind of work, you want to use a finer brush and be mindful of how loaded that brush is as you place it onto the model. The inside of the cape will be shaded with a mixture of Nuln Oil, Colia Green shade, and Lamian Medium. Now we should be ready for the last big push before the final details and accessories. It's everybody's favorite part of painting, edge highlighting. Here's the edge highlighting breakdown. For green armor, I'll be using Moot Green mixed with Gauss Blaster Green. For the black armor panels, the color used will be Mechanicus Standard Gray. For tubes and hoses, Stegadon Scale Green. And for all the metal areas, I'll be using Stormhose Silver. There are no real shortcuts here. Edge highlighting requires you to be patient and steady with your brushwork. Just get up close and personal with your miniature. Next are the red elements, the flame heraldry, and the actual flames in the torch. For these elements, I'll be using an array of Mephiston Red, Wild Rider Red, and Ural Yellow. For the torch fire, I'll push the tones further using White Scar. First, we need to draw the pattern on Adrax's sash, using Mephiston Red. Once the shape is defined, we can block it in, along with the flames on his belt. Then it's a matter of layering our tones downward, moving towards Ural Yellow. This same workflow can be followed for the torch as well. Just be sure to rotate the model as you work to ensure the tones are working well from every angle. Then I'll add some yellow edge highlighting to the brazier. And lastly, I will return to Adrax's head. For his skin, I will be using tones across Abaddon Black, Eshin Grey, and Mechanica Standard Grey. My goal here is to enhance the contrast that was brought out during the wash, which will increase the readability of his features. And his eyes will be done using our Ray of Flame heraldry colors, and transitioning them from red to yellow towards the center of his eyes. It is important not to overload your brush. You want to be extremely subtle because while these details are small, the eyes are the window to the soul, and will naturally be a focal point of the model. At this stage here, Adrax himself is pretty much done and ready for assembly. His custom base is modeled to be a volcanic plain. But seeing as how my salamanders are on desert-themed bases, the plan here is to treat the rocks on his base in the same manner as my desert bases, which can be seen in this video here. And instead of lava, I am going to experiment and see if I can get away with treating the volcanic elements of his base as if it was water. So from this point here, we have the desert earth and rock details defined. To achieve an effect of water, I am planning to use Vallejo's water texture. And in an attempt to enhance the effect, I've painted the bed with Mordian blue and layered in Instar's ocean blue matte near the edges of the rocks, which I believe will help create the illusion of depth and add richness to the result. As I apply the water texture, I'm trying to keep the layer fairly even, taking care not to let it look too messy, as I want this water to be fairly calm. And then I let it dry. The result I think is pretty good. It maintains the scenic quality of the character base, and it fits well alongside the other units in my army. And now, finally, Adrax Agatone is complete. Armed with Malleus Noctum and Dracus, this son of Vulcan is ready to lead this squad of aggressors as the Lord of Fire. Thanks for watching. While it was fun getting a model as detailed as Adrax painted to this standard so quickly, it was quite the challenge. So I hope you guys were at least able to find it enjoyable, if not interesting. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribing is the best way to help this channel grow. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them below. And with that, this video is done. It's time for me to see how Adrax does on the tabletop. So until next time, into the fires of battle.